Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th Tee podcast. Kieran Marsh and Nathan Drudy back with you for another week. Druds, there's plenty happening in the world of golf. Of course, we had the New South Wales Open on our shores here. We had the Valspar on the PGA Tour, Australians in action on the Corn Ferry, on the Ladies European. So plenty of results to get through and plenty of news, some newsworthy topics as well in the last week. But off the bat, my friend, how are you? Good to have you company, as always.
Hey, wonderful to be here. Very excited. I mean, it's always nice to be chatting golf on a Tuesday night for the past couple of weeks. With our scheduling's gone out the window. We were just saying normal programming will return next week when we get our asses into gear and get everything sorted.
Both a little under the weather yesterday. So we decided that we wouldn't bring subpar performances to the table. That's not what our listeners have come to expect from this dynamic duo in the past 2.5 years. So, and just confirming, wasn't COVID for either of us, particularly not yourself going through your peak over there in the People's Democratic Republic of Western Australia. Drew, so let's start at the New South Wales Open. It was a win for Harrison Crowe, which a remarkable performance from an amateur to take home. Last time, and you're going to probably correct me on this, and this is my usual level of due diligence and research. The last time I can remember an amateur winning a tournament of significance on our shores was Steph Kyriacou, way back at Bonneville on the Ladies European Tour event a couple of years ago, which was the last event before she turned professional. It's just a remarkable performance by Harrison Crowe. Yeah,
wasn't it? I mean, wowee. Sort of came from nowhere. Well, it actually didn't come from nowhere because he's had a hell of a summer. But I mean, when we were certainly giving our predictions, I mean, you look at the names behind it, Windred, Zunic, Felton, as the three names directly behind it, he held off some very, very good competition and none more so than the man that I tipped, who unfortunately finished absolutely nowhere near the top of the leaderboard in Daniel Gale, but flew home with a 62 on the final day. But all credit to Harrison Crowe. Unfortunately, doesn't get the winner's purse. That goes to Blake Windred, but 3 rounds, very, very consistent and really setting it up with 2 rounds of 64 and a 67.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there you've already touched on that we'll get to in a moment, the order of merit implications, and also 59 watch was on for the Gale Force on Sunday, and we'll talk about his genuine Mendoza effort there at Concord. I will say about Harrison Crowe, you mentioned it's been incredible summer for him. So per our good friend Ewan Porter, who's done an excellent job as the on-course reporter across the broadcast this summer, Crowe is the 6th amateur to win the New South Wales Open and adds the title to the New South Wales Amateur, the Victorian Amateur, and the Master of the Amateur titles that he's won all in the past 3 months. Now, I would suggest that all roads lead to the Australian Amateur, which is coming up. And if I were a betting man, I think that may well be the last tournament Harrison plays as an amateur, given his form. Just an incredible summer, to your point, and capped off, neatly winning his home state open. Had a friendly crowd there out at Concord. Don't think it's his home course, but certainly he's local and was well supported there, as he should have been. And yeah, to hold his nerve, I mean, playing at the at the back end as well. There was plenty of performances. Gale was one of them. Windred certainly on his heels, and to hold his nerve, I think, in that final group, really impressive from Harrison Crowe, Dresden.
Yeah, we always hear from our interview guests that they were waiting for the time to be right to turn pro. I think the time is right, Harrison. Turn pro. I mean, you may as well wait for the Australian Amateur now, but yeah, I agree with you, mate. I can't see him hanging around to be to be an amateur much longer. He'd much rather get in and earn potentially. He would have won $72,000, which does go to Blake Windred, mate. So that's really shuffled the order of merit up at the moment. So,
which let's go to that now, because we spoke to Aaron Pike, obviously, last week in the build-up to this event following his win in the Hunter Valley. And a lot of the questions there, because Pikey himself made a significant jump courtesy of that victory. I think he was up to 6th leading into this tournament as a result of the win in the Hunter Valley. He's now a spot back in 7th. But he made a really interesting point in the sense that, we had flagged that 9 of the top 10, minus Brad Kennedy, were in the field for the New South Wales Open. And this was the biggest purse remaining of the year. And so the implications from a top 3 perspective. Also, Pikey made the point that it wasn't necessarily a mixed event where there was WPGA players in the field who could potentially take some of that prize money. So a really important event, and how ironic that it's won by a young man who can't pocket any of the winnings. So potentially the biggest beneficiary, not to take anything away from Harrison Crowe's victory, is the man who came second, Blake Windred, who takes home the first place prize money. And in doing so, Drewster makes a huge jump. He's only played 4 events now across the summer, and he sits in 3rd. He's leaped ahead of Papadakis, Quayle, Dobler, Pike, Brad Kennedy, Jared Felton, all these guys who've played some of them 10 events, mainly around the 8 and 7 event mark. What a stroke of, well, not luck, because he's got to put himself in that position, but in terms of the way things could have fallen for Blake, a remarkable result to take home that winning check in terms of his fortunes for those top 3 spots getting a European Tour card.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's very interesting looking at the order of merit there at the moment, because we've said that Andrew Dodd has been pretty safe for quite some time. And now I think it's just getting a little bit interesting. Windred, obviously, $2,500 now behind. Dimi Papadakis, about $3,500 behind Blake Windred. So by no means is Andrew Dodd safe. Jed Morgan's absolutely home and hosed. But yeah, it's going to be a fascinating watch over the next 4 tournaments, which is what we got left. None of them are really big purses, which is obviously going to be a bit of a challenge for those who are behind to make up spots. I did see a comment today that mentioned, wouldn't it be great if there was a point system instead of dollars, so that amateurs could earn, I guess, some level of status, or not status, but to get their way up an order of merit. So that would be very interesting one to potentially discuss with the PGA when they join us on the show at some stage, as to the future of how it's all going to be calculated. But this is certainly racing up. This is certainly heating up. And I think the more that I look at it, I think that anyone sort of beyond Brad Kennedy now, at 85,900, so I'm talking Felton onwards, is probably unlikely to really make an impact. Jared Felton's back at 75,000. So
into a great, and even the result for someone like Jared Felton, who you mentioned there, it was a tie for 3rd. So he and Jordan Zernick split the 2nd place prize money, which is again advantageous for Blake Windred in his position. So really interesting implications on the order of merit. Take nothing away from Blake Windred. I mentioned he's only played the 4 events. He did win one of the other ones, and that was the Vic PGA right back at the start of the summer. And obviously, a good friend of this podcast has done some fantastic things in Europe across the back end of 2021. So he's in outstanding form. But in terms of how the cards could have fallen, not much better, I think, for him. As you say, only the 4 events left now. It'll be fascinating to see who, out of that kind of maybe 3 through 7 or 8 group, what they play. I know someone like Pike, he'll play all 4. He'll go to WA, he'll play the events there, he'll go up to NT to play the PGA where he's a former champion. Does everyone in there play all 4? So with that carrot of the tour card on the line, you'd imagine that there's some who'll need it more than others. But yeah, fascinating. As for the point system, I think it's always, we only ever have this debate, Druids, when an amateur wins. We never seem to talk about this on a consistent basis. And I think it's one of the unlucky stories. I mean, for someone like Harrison Crowe, yes, absolutely, he misses out on 72,000 here. Not that getting that, I think, would have factored him into a spot in terms of the European Tour cards. But as I said, this is his 4th amateur title in the last 3 months. He goes to the Australian Amateur as the red-hot favourite. He wins there. He maybe takes home 5 amateur titles across the summer, which I can tell you, he may not have money in his pocket, but as soon as he turns pro, there'll be people lining up to sponsor him, given that sort of form. So what you forego in the short term, when you put together a record like he has in the amateur game, he will absolutely reap the rewards when he makes that ultimate decision to turn pro.
Absolutely, mate. Could not agree more.
Want to talk about Gailey? Holy shit. I think I sent a message to you on Sunday. I just said, are you eyes on Gale here? Because this shouldn't have come as any surprise. You tipped him before the tournament. He is the genuine Jesse Mendoza of the PGA Tour of Australasia. For those unfamiliar with the reference, it's something that was coined on this podcast probably about a year ago when we try to describe those players who there's no middle ground. When they're hot, they are the hottest of hot. And when they're on skates, they slide really quickly. And that's Gailey. Like, he has the ability to go both ways to the extreme. And Sunday, he went out in 29, and then I think he birded his first 3 holes of the back 9. And I said, Drewster, you have to turn the TV on. I think the point at which I texted you, he was on the par 3 13th, I think it is. And he sticks his tee shot about 25 foot, and everyone's like, all right, the run's come to an end. He drains the 25-footer, and from about 4 feet out, he's got his hand up in the air with the point. Like, he was feeling himself on Sunday.
Good on him. What a champion.
Oh, I loved it. He is so entertaining.
He was on a roll. And it's not unsurprising. He'll be pleased with the 62, but by G, he'll be frustrated. He'll be really frustrated with his first couple of rounds there. He would have gone in with a lot of pressure. There would have been a lot of local support. You mentioned it for Harrison Crowe. There was plenty of support out for Gailey as well. So he would be undoubtedly disappointed with his efforts, albeit with a very handy 62 to rocket him up. I think when did he finish? About T15 or something like that. So
yeah, and can I just give the context? A 62 with 2 bogeys in his last 3 holes. I think he bogeyed 16 and 18. So it's like, genuinely, like, he pars those 2 holes, that's 60. He finds a birdie on one of those 2 holes, that's 59.
Yeah,
like, it was incredible. He is just, in terms of momentum, I don't think there's a better momentum player on the tour than Gailey, because when it's on, it is like, strap in, because it's a ride. It's a hell of a ride.
And he's still a red-hot crack to win one of the remaining 4.
Oh.
I imagine he'll absolutely play all 4 of the events coming up. So there's a good chance that he could jag one of those.
You said it. You said it. I think it might have been at the back of the PGA, or it might have even been the Queensland PGA. You said that he will win this summer.
Something.
And we're 4 tournaments to go, and I'm no less confident of that now than what I was when you said it.
Yeah,
I'm certain he will win.
Buying Gale stock.
Anyone else you wanted to mention here?
Not really. I thought just a shout out to the team at Concord, obviously, doing a great job to get the course up and up into a playable condition. 54 holes again, but so be it. Way better than having no golf played at all. So shout out to them. And I'll tell you what, for the whacks that we've given the PGA, I'm actually really looking forward to this 2-week break now that we've got before we get to the new event down at the National. I think, we so often talk about the PGA Tour in the States, just have it flooding us with golf. This is ideal, just to have 2 weeks off, give everyone a little bit of a break. Some players will absolutely leave. So Justin Warren's off to the States. There's a few others that are leaving now. But I think this 2-week break is going to give a lot of people the opportunity to recharge and to miss golf for a couple of weeks. So
you took the words right out of my mouth on both accounts. So, I think, firstly, on the Concord staff, when we look back on this summer, and I was going to crack a joke at the beginning saying I'm quite enjoying these novelty 54-hole events that we're having in the last couple of weeks. But when we look back on this summer, I think we'll remember some great golf, but by the length of the fairway, the most valuable component of this summer will be the green staff at respective courses. The effort that's gone in to get play in the last 3 weeks has been nothing short of remarkable. And to get any sort of play, 54 holes is absurd when you look at the conditions that they've dealt with. So certainly the staff of Concord, as we said about the courses in the last 3 weeks, deserve the utmost praise. And yeah, to the PGA, what a pat to the back for them to be able to persevere and push through. It would have been probably, honestly, easier to just put a line through these tournaments in the last couple of weeks. And I think they've taken heed of the feedback around how much and how important these tournaments are to these players, how much they're enjoying the regular cadence of golf, and they deserve all the credit that they're receiving at the moment for what's been to date a fantastic summer. As you say, we take a break now, reset, and go again in a few weeks' time when the national next, and then I think they head west to you. So yeah, really, really fantastic. Really fantastic effort on both accounts for the PGA and the Green Star. Did you have a shot of the week out of this tournament? I've been scrolling through. I swear someone hit an ace. Did someone hit an ace?
I think Blake Collier did. I reckon Blake Collier hit one, and I reckon he had an eagle as well. So, yes, you're absolutely right. I'm pretty sure Blake Collier had an ace here, and I'll give him my sure shot of the week. I can't get the scorecards to load on the website, so I'm just going to back myself there and say that Blake Collier had an ace. So
I'm looking. Blake Collier doesn't.
No.
Was
that last week?
No, he did. He did.
Excellent.
He had. Not only did he have an ace, he also had an albatross. No, an eagle. Sorry, you're right. Calm down, Kieran. So he had a 1 on the par 3 14th in the first round on Thursday, and then he had a 2 on the par 4 5th in the second round on Saturday. First round being Friday, given Thursday was cancelled. So yes, Blake Collier. I was gonna go to Sam Burns as my short shot of the week, but I will throw my, and that was more to do, obviously, classic Kieran with the moment than the actual shot. But no, I'll fold in behind you, Matt. Blake Collier deserves the raps for Absolutely. The short shot of the week. Take either of those, but I'd say the ace on 134 metre par 3 14th on Friday is probably the one to go with.
Absolutely. The Valspar. Have you got any thoughts on this tournament just before we get to Sam Burns?
I actually don't mind it. I think it's a victim of schedule. I quite like the course, to be fair, at Innisbrook there. I think it just comes at the end of, we are exhausted by the end of the Florida swing, to be fair. But yeah, credit to Sam Burns. I mean, back to back. I think he's his third win in the last year, and he joins a list of, I think, Cantlay and Hideki. And there's someone else I'm forgetting. It was a list of 4 of people to win 3 times in the past 12 months. But not easy to defend a title on the PGA Tour, as we well know, and to do it again, similar to what I said about Harrison Crowe in the final group. Like, he's playing alongside some pretty heavy names, none bigger than JT there in the last round. So to stare down that barrel, Sam Burns, I think, I won't say it's criminally underrated, but geez, he gets lost in the conversation behind, probably at the moment, definitely behind Morikawa and Hovland. I'd even suggest he gets lost behind Scheffler, who's in that kind of age bracket, which is weird.
Fly. Yeah.
Yeah. He is a stud, an absolute stud, Sam Burns.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good player. I don't know. Look, I didn't catch a hell of a lot of the Valspar. I mean, I think after the players, everyone just needs a detox, right? So, yeah, I'm not, I would just love to have a week off after this. I think it just would allow everyone to calm down instead of going straight into another tournament. But anyway,
given the withdrawals from the match play, it seems there'd be a lot of players who agree with you.
Yeah,
there's not many people heading to Austin. It seems more withdrawing than actually turning up.
Yes. But look, good on him for getting it done in a playoff as well. A credit to the PGA, they didn't go back up 18 again; they went to 16, so that was nice. Look, Sam Burns, very, very talented young player, and I agree with you. He absolutely should be considered amongst those people that we so often talk about in the likes of Schauffele and Morikawa, as you mentioned, and plenty of others as well. So, yeah, very, very handy player, and I think he's going to be a good part of President's Cup this year, and of course moving forward into Ryder Cups, he's going to be he's going to be a really integral part of that, particularly as that US team starts to age.
Just looking at his results in the past. Well, probably if I'm looking at it here, let's say since beginning of the year. So Century Tournament of Champions, T19, misses the next 3 cuts at the Farmers, Phoenix, and the Genesis. Since then, T9, T26, and First. But then if you go back since the beginning of the actual wraparound season, way back to October of last year, he wins the first event of the year, the Sanderson Farms. He's T14 at Shriners, T5, T7, T3, T2 before the year's out. So, yeah, he's not sneaky good. He's genuinely good, but I don't think he deserves the credit. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. I said I don't think he deserves the credit he gets. He barely gets any. What do you reckon he's paying for the Masters? I've just looked this up.
34.
41.
Ooh.
Let me tell you some of the players ahead of Sam Burns on the line of betting. Equal with him, Fitzpatrick, Oosthuizen, Rose, Neiman. Ahead of him, Zalatoris, no thanks. Finau, no thanks. Your boy, Paul Casey,
yep.
Maybe. Daniel Berger, no thanks. Scotty Scheffler,
yep.
Yeah, maybe. Hideki, defending champion.
No.
Pat Cantlay, yet to see it. So
he's on the missing persons unit at the moment.
Correct. Bryson, will he be there? Brooks has never performed well at Augusta, or never. Obviously, probably I shouldn't say that he's performed well at Augusta, but never genuinely threatened Xander. That's laughable. Like, there are some guys ahead of him that have no rights to be ahead of him on the line of betting. $41 Sam Burns is paying for the Masters at present.
It's interesting. You look at his game, and he's so well rounded. I mean, his worst stat from a headline perspective is strokes gained off the tee, where he ranks 71st at plus 0.15, and even that's not terrible, really, in terms of ranking wise. Very, very strong with the irons in hand, and very strong strokes gained tee to green. So look, he that 41 is absolutely overs, no doubt about it. His driving accuracy is 93rd. I mean, I think, as we'll touch on later this episode, the more that I like to think that we always talk about how important driving accuracy is at Augusta, I think it's just becoming less and less relevant. It's important, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be the thing that breaks players. If you miss the fairway, you can still win. So, no, I like that. That's good. At 41, definitely.
Anyone else stand out for you here? The only one that I want to talk about is JT.
Yeah.
Who, look, what I'll say here is posting results without them necessarily being wins, but also without him looking like he's getting out of fourth gear, which I think is ominous. Now, he is one that we speak about seemingly around every major, and one that we've often said certainly has been disappointing in the 4 biggest tournaments of the year, given he's a 14-time winner on the PGA Tour and should have more than the one that he's won. But he is in some touch, and he's going to Augusta this year with something different than he has ever had, and that's bones on the bag, which outside of Steve Williams, there's probably maybe not another caddy that I'd want on my bag than Bones at Augusta National. So just put that in the black book. Don't be surprised if in a couple of weeks' time I'm saying Justin Thomas is my pick outside of Jordan Spieth, obviously. But yeah, there's something about him at the moment, the way he's playing, and he played that well on Sunday in the Yoggers. So yeah, he's in ominous form.
The only one I wanted to mention was a man that you just touched on there, and that's Brooks Koepka. Low round of the day today, 65, shot up 33 spots. So I don't know. He's just gone very quiet since obviously Bryson hasn't been playing on the tour. So there's that little fabricated crap has kind of gone away for a little while, and all of a sudden the golf seems to be starting to turn around for Brooks. So just one that I've kind of got my eye on. Yeah, nearly backdoor top 10 today for Brooks Koepka. So that's the only one I wanted to mention. No, I think the Aussies were pretty average. I don't think anyone made the cut, and there was only 2 of them in the field, I think.
3, I think. Day, Hensby, and Percy all missed the cut.
All righty.
That's probably all that on the Valspar. There is a few other quick results I wanted to flag before we get into the news element, because there's a shitload of that. So in terms of other Australians around the world, Curtis Luck had his best finish in almost 2 years at the Chitty Marcha Louisiana Open on the Corn Ferry Tour. So a 6 under 65 in the final round got him into, I think it was a tie for fifth. He was outside the top 20 going into the final round. So he finished. Oh, come on, Kieran. This is good stuff here. I think it was a tie for fifth, which, as I said, best performance for Curtis Luck, the West Australian, in close to 2 years on the Corn Ferry Tour. And then over on the Ladies European Tour, our good friend Drewster and former Ladies European Tour Rookie of the Year, Steph Kyriakou, finished in a tie for sixth in a first international event for 2022, which is the Aramco Saudi Ladies International. Ended up being won by Georgia Hall, and Steph finished in a tie for six. I think it was 5 or 6 back. So yeah, good little results there around the world for some Australians playing outside of the major tours as well.
Yeah, Whitney Hillier finishing T17 over in Saudi as well, but no one getting absolutely anywhere near Georgia Hall. Finished at 11 under, and she was 5 shots ahead, and she was the only player to shoot under par all 4 rounds. So everyone else had some pretty shockers in there, to be honest. So shout out.
On the men's European Tour, the DP World Tour, 3 Aussies in the field at the Stein City Johannesburg event. Matt Van Cleef and Jason Scrivener both finished in the tie for 64th. Scotty Hend missed the cut, I should say. Other Aussies in the field at the Chitty Marcha, where Curtis Luck finished T5, Brett Druitt T51, Rain Gibson outright 74th, Aaron Badley, Stephen Vodich and Nick Vogt all missed the cut. And then on the Epsom Tour, the Carlisle Arizona Women's Golf Classic, here at Naveed in a tie for 9th, and Gabby Ruffles in a tie for 12th there as well. Julian Sue, tie 40, Amelia Garvey, T59, Robin Choi missing the cut. So that's your Aussies around the world, Drewster. So, Drudes, as we flagged, fair bit of news, actually. A bit going on in the world of golf away from the course in the past week. We'll probably work our way backwards in chronological order. So most recently, only as of today, this morning, in fact, recording Tuesday night, it was announced that Phil Mickelson will not contest the Masters. Unclear at this stage whether it was entirely his decision. It's certainly been framed in that way. It was kind of framed that Phil Mickelson has advised Augusta National that he will not be playing the Masters, but you must think that there was potentially a suggestion from the club that he not attend, given their risk averse nature.
It's I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, you can't tell me there wouldn't be some shady people knocking around the walls of Augusta National, right?
Oh, well, I mean, you only have to look back, I think, to Tiger. When Tiger made his return, I think it was 2010, when Billy Payne, the former president or chairman of Augusta National, gave that absurd speech. But I get the sense under Fred Ridley, it's just a different era. And look, if he decided maybe to come back at this week at the WGC or at the Valero down in San Antonio, which is the tournament prior, maybe, but it would be a circus if the Masters was his first tournament back, and not necessarily in line with the club's values to take the attention away from the tournament or from the course itself.
Absolutely correct, but gee, it would have been fun. It would have been a lot of fun. I was really hoping. I think, I think, Jane Monahan's got a question to answer to. I know that, they're very much separate of themselves, but I think the tour certainly would have been putting some pressure on the club in the minimal sway that it would probably have, but the words certainly would have been there from Jane Monahan to say that Phil probably isn't welcome this year. So I'm sure more will come out of that in the next week.
My only other thing to say on this is, if not here, then where? right? So this kind of made sense. It felt maybe a little early in the timeline, given it sounded pretty serious when he said he needed to take some time away in his statement. But if not the Masters, then where? Because I can't imagine if Augusta National have suggested maybe he doesn't come. I can't imagine the R&A will want him at the Open Championship. Does the USGA feel the same from a US Open perspective? So is he welcome back to defend his title at the PGA? It's just, if not the Masters, then when will we see Phil again? Is this the question that comes to mind for me? And then probably secondary to that is, I know that we were pretty strong in our thoughts on him, but like, when has he served his time? Because it does seem now it's floating into a punishment that doesn't necessarily match the crime.
But also, what's the crime? It's
Yeah,
all
this is
hearsay
true
at
as well.
the moment, right? Like it's all hearsay, and there is no punishment unless there's been something that's happened behind closed doors between the tour and Phil. So I think that's the biggest thing for me at the moment. Is it's kind of like, and it certainly wouldn't surprise me if there has been some sort of punishment handed down by the tour, then why has there been no communication about it? And they're notoriously bad at that. But it's a state of flux at the moment for me. Looking at it, I'm like, why is Phil not playing any of these tournaments? If he has been served some sort of punishment, no one's the wiser. So obviously he's taking a self-imposed break. But yeah, I don't know. I think there'll be more information to come on that in the next little while, particularly in the lead up to it anyway.
Ironically, given where he's at in terms of not playing, his former and look, potentially maybe even future again, business partners in Live Golf Investments are ploughing on, Druids. We finally have an announcement from the captain of their ship, Mr. Gregory Norman, of some events on the radar for the Live Golf Investment Group.
Well, I'll tell you what, Greg Norman seems to be doing that much media at the moment. Like, it could be a chance.
We should have put a request in for the Shark.
We should.
Greg.
I mean, look, I don't know if we want to pump up the tires of that too much, but I mean, Jesus, if it gets Greg Norman on the show and we can talk about his career and we have to talk about this tournament series for 5 minutes, I'll sell my soul for that. No, Live Golf Investments, which is obviously the funding the Saudi-backed league, announced on Wednesday the new series, which is called, surprise, surprise, the Live Golf Invitational Series. It will launch in June. It's dishing out 255 mil in total purses, which is enormous. It'll be 8 event series, 4 events in the US, and then further single events in the UK, Thailand, and Saudi Arabia as well. And there will be a season-ending team championship. So that is TBA as to where that will be. There's nothing about any committed players. There's no committed TV partners. There are still a lot of questions. But I guess the schedule, if I'll just run through this very quickly, Marshy, there's no real standout courses on this that you would recognize perhaps instantly, apart from, I would say, Trump National, which is not unsurprising to see Donald Trump getting his hands in this. So other courses, so June 9 to 11 Centurion Golf Club in London, July 1 to 3 Pumpkin Ridge in Portland, Oregon, July 29-31 is Trump National. Then we go to the International in Boston, Rich Harvest Farms in Chicago, Stonehill Golf Club in Bangkok, Thailand, Royal Greens Golf Club in Saudi Arabia, obviously, and then the Team Championship, which is TBA. I'd suggest that would probably be somewhere in the Middle East as well. The one that really stands out to me here, Marshy, is Pumpkin Ridge in Portland. I must admit that I did not expect us to go to the Pacific Northwest for this new tournament. So I think that'll be fascinating to watch. And of course, we do know that that Australia and the PGA and Golf Australia were approached, but declined to be involved. So very, very interesting. And I guess for what it's worth, although this has got a lot of issues behind it, it is finally nice to actually see some meat on the bone in terms of an announcement, because we've been waiting a while on this one.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, to be fair, I did note a couple of things that were spoken about more broadly in the golf media after this announcement. Two important things are that now that you have some events, and I think this was Eamon Lynch who wrote this, you finally have some pressure on some players to commit, because it's been an abstract concept up until now, right? But now that you have some events with some astronomical prize money on the line, I think it's a $20 million purse for each event, which, to put that into context, we just had the Players' Championship as the richest tournament in golfing history at $20 million. It's a $20 million purse for each event on this tour, and I think maybe more for that final event of the 8. So money talks, Streets, and it will be incredibly difficult for people to resist the opportunity. And then the flow-on effect from that will be the guys who've said, we ain't going, we're not interested, will only be able to hold out for so long, you would think, when I respectfully say this, mid-tier players to even third-tier players jag or win in one of these tournaments and take home 20 million, or not 20 million, but $8 or $9 million as part of that purse. So it's a fascinating concept now because it's real. Like, we have events locked in. Broadcast rights are a whole different kettle of fish, and who'll take this, but people are going to have to commit now. You're going to have to put your name down, and there'll be plenty of guys who aren't in your top 50 in the world who line up at an opportunity to win that sort of money.
And the other money piece is the appearance, I guess, for lack of appearance fees. So not only will you be competing for 20 million every week, but you can't tell me if Dustin Johnson goes over, he's not being paid a fairly handsome sum to come and play on the tour regardless. So there's going to be some big numbers thrown around. I think there's going to be some big players take this on. The tour has previously said that anyone who joins a breakaway league will be banned from the PGA. I don't really understand that. Greg Norman has said that it's not possible for them to do that. So that will be a fascinating watch to watch the fallout. And to your point, it forces the PGA to its hand here in a lot of ways. They've thrown money at the problems. Of course, the players went up. It's their flagship tournament to 20 mil. The PIP was obviously introduced as a direct competitor to all of this. There's money being thrown around left, right, and center. So it'll be fascinating to see now what the PGA Tour's next move if it is to ban players. That'll be certainly something controversial. But I think they're going to have to make their statement pretty quick. Because players will start moving, and I don't think they can afford to wait on, particularly if big name players go. I'm sure they would come up with a completely different strategy than, to your point, if mid-tier players go, they're probably not that concerned, right? Like, they're never going to say that, but let's be honest.
Not in the short term, but they should be, given the ripple effect that it may cause, as I said, because those guys will only sit back for so long to let people take money out of their hands, because that's how they would perceive it, right? That if I was playing in that tournament, there's no way that person would win and take home that $8 or $9 million. So fascinating. The other interesting point that I wanted to make, not me making it, it's been made prior to me, but I mentioned 2 points. The second is that if you look at the 4 events where they're playing in the States, it's largely in areas of the country that the PGA Tour has neglected. Whether it's the fact they've never been there or they had been there previously and have taken events away from that area. And that's absolutely on purpose. That they would have been incredibly calculated about where they scheduled events on American soil, and it's absolutely in areas where they perceive the PGA Tour to be weak. Yep. So, yeah, very, very interesting. We will watch that space, particularly when players start to commit, because the events will be upon us very, very soon. Drew, so in a similar light, I feel like we've been talking about breakaway leagues a lot in the last couple of months, but it's been all Live Golf or the SGL, and the one, the forgotten party in all this, albeit we did speak about them as arguably the biggest beneficiary of Phil Mickelson's blunder, and that's the PGL, the Premier Golf League, which is run by Andy Gardner, a London financier. I've always loved that term. What the fuck does that even mean? But private equity money essentially behind the PGL, and they are more of the team events. So 4-man teams, 54-hole no-cut events, about $10 million purse per event. And they're looking at kind of upwards of 16, maybe 18 events across the year, but far more collaborative with the PGA Tour. In fact, they've gone out of the way to say that we want to work with them and painted themselves as a friendly alternative to the SGL. The reason why I bring them up is that it's been reported, firstly by the Fire Pit Collective and not Jeff Shackelford, sorry. I've forgotten his name. The other American golf writer, it's
Dylan
DeChambeau. The one that McIlroy called out in the Ryder Cup. Where's what the press conference? Anyway, we'll move on. I'll come back to it. A leaked email to the Fire Pit Collective, which was sent by the PGL directly to Rory McIlroy, dated February 14th, which is the day that McIlroy was voted onto the directorship of the PGA. So very intentional. And that they kind of outlined all the things that they'd shared with the PGA Tour. They spoke about, their intention to raise equity quickly for not only PGA Tour members, but DP World Tour members, Korn Ferry Tour members, selling shares in the team to obviously the owners of each team being players or captains who pick their teams, but the ability for players on those teams to buy shares in their teams. And therefore, if the value of the team increases, so does, the pockets of those players on the team over and above what they win. So they were very, I think, overly transparent with McIlroy in terms of their dealings to date with the PGA Tour, because they are painting themselves as a genuine alternative that's friendly and collaborative and in the best interests of the players. And I just think it's fascinating that they now have what we think to be genuine real estate with how on the nose the SGL and Live Golf are. Because I don't think, and we said this at the time, the PGA Tour can't bury their head in the sand now. They have to start looking at alternatives because it's becoming too enticing for the players. And if there's a more palatable one, PGL are going out of their way to make sure that they lobby people like Rory McIlroy, who's a critical domino on this, to ensure they're positioning themselves as the only alternative.
Is he still chairman of the pack?
I believe so. He's certainly on the pack, and I think you're right. I think he might be chairman of the pack. He's now, but what he got. Sorry, to clarify, what he got elected to on February 14th was one of the 4 player directors on the PGA Tour's policy board.
Right.
So there's the player advisory committee, which I think any rule change or the like is run by the pack, and I think it's around 20 odd players on the PGA Tour, and I think he's the chairman of that. But these 4 player directors sit on the policy board, which has far more sway and kind of strategy and things like considering alternate tours or rebel leagues. So yeah, the PGA have gone on the front foot. The PGL have gone on the front foot in terms of lobbying a critical, stakeholder in Rory McIlroy.
Very here for the PGL. I'll say it again. Very here.
Alan Shipnuck is the name of that rider who I was thinking of. Alan Shipnuck is the man behind the Fire Pit Collective. But yes, I agree. We've always said the PGL is our preferred option. So good on you, PGL. Pro PGL here, Andy Gardner, if you're looking for a broadcast partner. What else did we have in news? The RNA and the USGA. Briefly, Druids, and this is probably will put some people to sleep, but I think interesting in the context of all the things that Bryson has brought to the fore from a distance perspective. So the RNA and the USGA, being the 2 governing bodies of golf internationally, have released an updated what they call areas of interest in the distance report. And it seems very clear that they are narrowing down on 2 things, and that is the driver head and the ball. So the intention at this point, it seems to be, by way of a rollback, to use a saturated term these days, is to target the ball and make it spin less, essentially, and target the driver head. The idea being that driver head technology to this point has got to a stage where there really is no punishment for not hitting the middle of the club. I think Bryson said it famously. He's complaining about the fact the ones coming off the heel or toe recently weren't going straight. Well, that's the whole fucking idea. And I think that's what they're talking about now in terms of focusing on the driver head, is ensuring that the technology is rolled back to a point that rewards middling the ball as opposed to these incredibly forgiving driver heads that we find these days. Lastly, I think it's important to point out that it has become absolutely crystal clear now that bifurcation is the way they'll go. And that is that the amateur game, you, me, 99.5% of people listening to this podcast won't be affected by this. These are rules they'll implement under professional tournaments and at the professional level. So sure, if you want to go and buy this different technology and pay, probably hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a new driver to play like the pros, sure, you'd be welcome to, but it's not as though our friends at Cobra will only be making one sort of club. Increasingly, it's becoming obvious that it will split out, bifurcate, as they say, and there'll be two sets of balls and clubs for the professional level and the amateur level.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, I think, particularly, I think more broadly for the state of the game. They have said this before, the RNA and the PGA. I think you remember maybe a year ago, they kind of said a similar thing that, yep, we're looking into it. We know distance is an issue. So just, it'll be interesting to see what actually comes of it, if there's going to be any tangible rollbacks in the next couple of months. But another one to keep our eye on, KM. I
think that's it from a golf news perspective.
What else?
Anything else from you?
Nah, nothing from me. Nah.
Okay. Couple of quick things.
Okay.
A couple of quick things here.
All righto.
First and foremost, AFL came back last weekend. A win for the reigning premiers, my Melbourne Demons. A win for your Hawks. Hard fought one, but got there in the end over North, which was good to see. Sammy Mitchell's first game as coach. And maybe most pleasingly for the two of us, and we'll alienate half our audience here, a loss for the Eagles at home in Opera Stadium against the Gold Coast Suns for the first time in their history, winning in Perth to open the season. So couldn't have got better for me from an AFL perspective for the opening round.
You were very happy with this, Marshy. I mean, look, I think for the Hawks, it was good performance. You can clearly see that there's a lot of rust still on the ship that is Hawthorn at the moment. There's no way we're going to be playing finals this year. Good win, don't get me wrong, but a lot to still get right. Melbourne looked good. I thought it was interesting. Carlton beating Richmond was obviously an interesting one.
Blues look very good. I don't know if I think this is remarkable to say after one
round one.
Yeah, I reckon the Blues might be a little bit of Melbourne 2018.
Okay.
Like I reckon they'll have a really good year, but I think it's probably a year or two early because the brand they played enough is sustainable across the entire season. But really exciting for their fans. They've been through a desert of late, Carlton.
Yep.
And Carlton are one of those clubs, love them or hate them, the competition's better when they're playing well, given what their fans bring. So I agree. I think that for me was almost the performance of the weekend because a lot of people had Richmond bouncing back this year, and I think it's pretty clear that they're a ways off the pace.
Yeah, I mean, you look around the league and there's one that's just gone well and truly under the radar that I don't think anyone really cares about much, and that was Geelong. They were if you were to play a grand final tomorrow, they'd be unbeatable. They were absolutely dominant from woe to go. Essendon never got into that game at all. So, they're going to be very, very good again. I think there's going to be much of the same as what we saw last year. I can't imagine there's going to be anyone rising up the ranks or dropping off too dramatically. Maybe the Eagles with obviously the injury list that they've got at the moment. But who knows? Who knows, to be honest. It's round one. Let's not get too carried away, Marshy.
I know. I just love seeing the Eagles have a loss. I'm looking forward to getting down to Metricon on Saturday night to see my D's take on the Suns. Haven't seen them in the flesh for some time.
That'll be nice.
So looking forward to getting down there, and it's good to have the footy back. It's good to have the F1 back, Druids. How good was Bahrain? So a couple of things. Love to see Max Verstappen, his car go to shit with 3 laps remaining. Fantastic to see that. Love to see Ferrari 1-2. Big. I'm more of a Carlos Sainz fan than I am a Charles Leclerc, but I like them both. But most importantly, Kevin Magnussen and the Team Haas in P5. I've watched 4 seasons of Drive to Survive now. Comfortably, my favourite person is Gunther. I've never seen him as happy as what he was post-race in Bahrain. Amazing scenes for Haas.
wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a really fascinating race. Fascinating quality. I mean, look, from a McLaren perspective, not great. Tough week all round. I think there's pretty clearly some issues more broadly around the team and the car at the moment. But yeah, it was
well, tough week. Not sorry to jump in, but a tough week in general for anyone using a Mercedes engine.
Yeah,
like if you look across the board, the Mercedes engine did not perform well at all.
No,
and the Ferrari one conversely did. So, in terms of Ferrari, Haas, Alfa Romeo did well. So, yeah, very, very interesting opening round. Clearly, the new technology across the cars that's been implemented, making it easier to follow, has made for an interesting race, because I shit on Max Verstappen because I don't like him, but it was a great battle between he and Leclerc up until 2 or 3 laps to go when the Red Bull car failed. So yeah, awesome to have it back, and they're back on the track in Dubai or Abu Dhabi this week. Let's get the two confused. It's a 5 or 6 day turnaround. They're still in the Middle East, so look forward to seeing that. And then Drewster, just finally, Mr. Unlimited. We're cooking in Denver. My mighty Broncos have sold the house for Mr. Russell Wilson, and yes. I am up and about. Look, the options were he or Aaron Rodgers, and I'm pretty happy that I didn't have to endure, 12 months of talk about ivermectin being a proper way to treat COVID-19. So, Russ has his quirks, and I'm already pretty over him saying Broncos country, let's ride, because he's saying it like every 3 seconds, but thrilled. No quarterback in the league has won more games in their first 10 years. And yeah, we gave up a fair bit, but we had to. Drop Russ in there, could be anything for the mighty Broncos this year.
Firstly, since when Broncos? I remember you having a Houston Texans hat.
So I've had this question a little bit.
Thank you.
I'm happy to address it here and now.
Please.
When your franchise quarterback and your favourite player, comfortably for me, is accused of widespread sexual assault. 22 different civil lawsuits Deshaun Watson is currently facing, despite just being signed to a 5-year contract to the Cleveland Browns.
Unreal. So
that was a pretty key driver for me to go. And then just the complete mismanagement. Let go DeAndre Hopkins, let go JJ Watt. So I did for a period of time consider supporting the Cardinals, because it's essentially Houston 2.0, given all the players they've taken. But ultimately, I did a little bit of research, and before the beginning of last season, I landed at Mile High Stadium in Denver, Colorado. Wasn't much to write home about last year. We had fucking Drew Lock or Teddy Two Gloves Bridgewater playing quarterback for us, and continually missing targets, and also Vic Fangio's head coach, which is completely uninspiring. We now have a new coach, Nathaniel Hackett. Love him. A lot of energy, the old defensive coordinator from Green Bay. And now we've got, as I said, Mr. Unlimited, the great Russell Wilson, Super Bowl winning quarterback, Russell Wilson. And the kicker, Ciara, however you say her name, she's come too. It's great tunes on the side for Russ. So, as I said, let the man cook. It's going to be great. It could be anything. We could also, considering we're in the AFC West and he's up against Mahomes, Herbert, and Derek Carr, who now has Devontae Adams to throw to, we could also miss the playoffs entirely. So it'll be fun to watch, regardless.
Yes, it absolutely will. The only other thing that I wanted to mention very, very quickly was March Madness is on.
Wow. One of the great sporting events annually around the globe.
Yeah, phenomenal. There's been some wonderful upsets already. Michigan is through to the Sweet 16, ranked number 11 in the, I think it's the Midwest bracket. Iowa State and Miami are through. They were ranked 10 and 11, knocking off 2 and 3 seeds. But the big one that everyone's obviously talking about, and there's always one Cinderella story, that's St. Peter's, who knocked off number 2 Kentucky by 6 points, and then Murray State by 10 points. They come up against Purdue, who are a very, very well-oiled machine, knocking off your Texas Longhorns. So,
I think you mean Purdue.
Purdue.
Are St. Peter's
Breeze.
the Peacocks? Who are the Peacocks?
No, I wouldn't have a clue. But there's always one team that comes from nowhere. And this year it's St. Peter's. So I'll be rooting for them. Obviously, Oregon not getting picked into that this year. Deservedly so. But I'm well on board the St. Peter's train.
They are. They're the Peacocks. The St. Peter's Peacocks basketball. I'm here for the Peacocks. Are they? And I don't have the bracket in front of me, but on one side, I don't know if it's their side. I think it's the opposite. But obviously, you've got Coach K, the famous Coach K at Duke in his final year. You know, he's the fingerprints of Coach K over literally hundreds of NBA players. And it looks as though before it would be the penultimate playoff game before they reach the national championship would be against North Carolina, which is like, if there's two schools from a basketball perspective that hate each other, it's Duke and North Carolina, which would be awesome in the penultimate game before the national championship if they get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Two obviously North Carolina-based schools, and they did play in the last Coach K's last game at Duke's home stadium, and North Carolina upset the apple cart and knocked them off. But yes, St. Peter's would meet Duke eventually if they get to the Final Four. But St. Peter's have got to beat Purdue this week, and then if they win that, they take on either North Carolina or UCLA, obviously being two powerhouses of college basketball. So yeah, very, very interesting to watch. If you haven't got into it, certainly recommend, because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
It's great. All right, briefly before we go, a few things logistically from a podcast perspective.
For those who are still listening.
Some great stuff coming down the pipeline. So obviously, as we said, we've missed Mondays for the last 2 weeks. So just one episode a week each week for the last 2 weeks. But regular programming shall resume from next week, all things being equal. And coming down the pipeline by way of an interview, so your Thursday night editions, Aaron Wilkin, who was an excellent chat. I always had a feeling, because from the outside watching, he looks like one of the most beloved amongst his peers, but also one of the funniest members of the tour. He was great. Cassie Porter, who we have waxed lyrical about since her opening tournament as a pro back at the WPGA event at Royal Queensland. And then David Micheluzzi, who may well have the best mustache. He competes against Anthony Quayle in that category, but he's also featured on many leaderboards on the PGA Tour of Australasia this summer. So a couple of great interviews coming down the pipeline. A couple of great giveaways coming. We are going to run one at the conclusion of the summer, asking you for your favourite moment or memory of the Australian summer, given how awesome it's been from the whole. We'll have a Masters giveaway coming up in a couple of weeks' time. And then, Drewster, we are fast approaching episode 200. So we're going to throw that back to the listeners much in the same fashion as we did episode 100. It will be a pure Q&A episode, and anything and everything's on the table, as you've seen tonight. So they don't have to be golf-related questions. They can be anything. And we'll commit to answering, well, I'll say now we'll commit to answering almost everything. We'll probably just have to censor a few before they come through. But we'll be giving away a prize from the cabinet. It could be anything in there. It could be something from our friends at Sure Shot. Could be something from our friends at Oakley. There's plenty of stuff there. We'll be giving away a prize to the best question that is submitted for episode 200. So we'll start to put some stuff out formally, but if you're already thinking of questions, drop us a DM, send us an email, send us a direct message personally. Start getting your questions in for episode 200, because it'll be completely yours as the listener. You'll be in control, and there'll be a prize, as I mentioned, for the best question as judged by myself and Drewster.
Yes. Last one that I was just going to mention, Blitz Golf making its long-awaited return, 16th of April, out at Glenelg in Adelaide. So unfortunately, I won't be able to get over there due to work, but if you are in South Australia, make sure you get out and get amongst it, because it's going to be an unreal day. And also the 26th of April over here in Perth, it's a day after a long weekend. Just take an extra long weekend, and that will be a lot of fun. I'll certainly be out there as well. So shout out to Blitz Golf. We'll get some more information from Simon and the team and share it amongst everyone. But that's this week. I think we've gone to an hour, so we tried our best. I think we'll be just under. Oh, I don't know. Just under. All right, let's shut up and wrap it up then.
Good to have your company, mate. We'll catch you next week.